Welcome to the Geek Easy. Sit back, grab a libation of your choice, and relax, 'cause it's time to do some geek stuff in the Geek Easy. Welcome to the Geek Easy, fellow geeks. Grab a beverage of your choice, because today we will be reviewing Superman Birthright, published by DC, written by Mark Waid, and Lionel Francis Yu is the penciler, Jerry Alan Gillian, the guy right there, is the inker. This book is what DC did to update the Superman origin story for the 21st century. And wow. Excuse me. You know, it's got the the basic tenet. I mean, it's the origin is still pretty much the same. Superman, Kal-El as a baby sent to Earth, because Krypton is dying, it's going to blow up, and he's raised by Ma and Pa Kent in Kansas, goes to Metropolis, becomes Superman. Now, how those events transpire are different in the retellings. Pre-crisis, there was a Superboy. Well, they actually started that later, but Lex Luthor and he knew each other as kids. Lex Luthor hated Superman and Superboy because he made Superboy responsible for Lex losing his hair, and that's why he hated Superman all this time. You take Crisis and then you do the redoing of Superman with John Byrne, the Man of Steel miniseries. That is the first, and I think the seminal, the best retelling of Superman's origin story. Changed Lex Luthor, changed the whole back history of Superman. I mean, there was no Superboy. They didn't know he was an alien right off. He didn't have his powers right away. It took him a long time. Changed Lex Luthor's backstory. It was a great story. So, but as things go, they need to update things every few years to keep up with the times. And that's what this book is doing. And Mark Waid puts his spin on it. So, as usual, it starts out with, him being sent off to Earth. Then it jumps 25 years into the future. He is a young man. He's over in Africa as a reporter for this kind of an independent paper, so shall we say. And he's doing a story about a guy from a tribe over there in a country who their tribe is being held down by another tribe in that, and it's kind of an equal rights thing. It's an allegorical thing for stuff that's going on, here in the States and all that. And you can see Mark Waid is laying some groundwork for later on in the book, because they're talking about culture. They're talking about, this, and this guy was talking about how they don't use masks because people in masks are trying to hide something. And so that will explain, we'll go a little bit later as to why Superman doesn't wear a mask. And we find out that he's been using his powers all along to do things, but not, just, as Clark Kent, which is something that he, I guess, borrowed from or incorporated from the John Byrne story. There are a lot of things from the John Byrne story that he puts into this, and there is a certain event that causes him to head back home and rethink what he's doing. Talks with his dad, or with Pa, and you get the origin story of the suit. And he's still, at this point, he knows that he's an alien. He just doesn't know where from and all this. And then you start getting a little bit of background. You haven't seen Lana Lang in years. They bring that up, but then they never, during this thing, bring her up again. So I don't see the point in bringing that up. You start getting in flashbacks his relationship with Lex Luthor, who grew up in Smallville, so they're kind of getting the old, Golden Age Superman thing and the Smallville thing going, that, yes, they grew up together, they knew each other, and this is a different take on Lex Luthor as well as the same, because he was really rich and really smart, but people hated him just because he was so smart and he had no social graces. He was just the type of guy that was just like, he was arrogant. He thought he was a lot better than most of the people there, which in some aspects he was, but the arrogance, just kept, made it so he just, And Clark was not well liked by people, just for a different reason. So there was a point where they did start hanging out together and became somewhat friends, but then I'm not going to spoil a lot of stuff, but they separated, and Lex left. Excuse me. So at this point now, later when Lex runs into Clark in Metropolis, he doesn't recognize him. And he, obviously he's not going to recognize Superman, and so they have to do a little bit of gymnastics to explain why he wouldn't recognize a guy that he spent like 2 years being friends with. I mean, even as Clark Kent. But the one thing that I like what he did was they incorporated the scientist aspect of the original Lex Luthor and the businessman aspect of the John Byrne version of Lex Luthor, which they are using now, the businessman, and combining it. He's a scientist who is using his science knowledge to create this multi-billion dollar company. And in this one, he's kind of a dick. So you just get this, I mean, just this really devious, even more so than in some of the comics that I've read lately, personality where it's just like, he's the only one that matters. Everyone else, he will just squish underneath his heels. I mean, he's vicious in this one. And the again, they've made it so the reason he doesn't like Superman is power. You know, he's supposed to be Lex Luthor is supposed to be the smartest person. He's supposed to be the most powerful person. And Superman is going to take that away from him, and he doesn't trust him. And there's a whole kind of a xenophobia thing, you know, like, yes, he's an alien. And so what are his intentions? And so Lex Luthor uses that to get some distrust among the people. And that's one thing I did sort of like about this is because that would actually happen. I mean, people aren't, you know, once they find out that, you know, Lex did reveal that he was an alien, he's the one that found out. He found out on his own that Superman was an alien. He reveals it to the people. And there's that distrust. Then he manipulates that distrust by staging an invasion. So that was, you know, I like the whole, people are just, some people are just like, wait a minute, who is this guy? Can we trust him? And that's one of the things they updated it with for the 21st century is people are getting a little bit distrustful of the media and the government and all that stuff. So he's incorporating that into the story. I liked what he did, with this, of course, but there's only one, they changed his powers a little bit, you know, like he can see like auras around, or energy around living beings and all that stuff, which I don't think he was able to do in the other stuff. So, I mean, he altered some of his powers a little bit, which I don't know if they're still putting it in some of the, you know, mainstream comics. But there's one thing that he put, a little side note they put on here. Was that Clark is a vegetarian. Which, this is odd. Never had that up there before. But they've kind of made the whole Lois Clark relationship when they first meet antagonistic as before. And Perry is kind of funny. There's a scene in here where she's in his office at 8:45 where she is every morning, and she's just like basically trying to tell Perry how to run the paper. And then there's a list where he's like, all these reasons to keep her, all these reasons to fire her. It's pretty funny. And I like this, but like I said, I am partial to the John Byrne version myself. So I like that a little bit better. But this, this is a almost as good. So I'm gonna give it a 4.0 out of 5 and say, it's a great story. It's a good story. The art is at some points a little blocky. I'm not sure I found it to be a little distracting at some points. And their version of Perry is a little different than what I'm used to, or what they did. And I like, here's where they're discussing on how to make people not see Superman when he's Clark. The reason why he wears the suits, because if he wears a regular shirt, you can see the six-pack. So they have to have all the bigger clothes, so it kind of hides his body, and he will speak lowly, quietly, so people won't listen to him and blend in. And then, his eyes, right? This explains why one of the reasons his glasses is, look how blue his eyes are, and people are always talking about how piercing blue his eyes are. And one of the reasons he wears glasses is it hides his eyes. It changes the appearance of his eyes. But where was I at? But anyway, yeah, he's the art is just a little bit different. When you're talking Superman or in Origins, I love Byrne's art on that, and this one isn't. This one isn't as awesome as Byrne's art, but I liked. I mean, it was okay. And this kind of reminds me of the what they're talking about for the Tim Burton, Kevin Smith Superman movie with Nick Cage. Having the giant spider. I don't know if that inspired this or not, but yeah, it's. Like I said, I'm going to give it a 4.0 out of 5 and say it's an interesting read, so get it. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Like, subscribe, and most of all, enjoy your comments.